Hey, what's up everybody? So I'm gonna go over a little bit of the 5-speed stuff that I've done so far. I know it's becoming more popular, especially since we're all sticking together and we've been working on our cars for a while. So I'm just gonna give you guys a quick little rundown of like what I can, as far as, since it's all in and installed already. So let's go ahead and take a look. Underneath my car, you guys saw my shifter bezel and my pedals already from up top. So as you can see here, this is the Z31 NA transmission. A few things that I ran into. First off, for those that don't know, the manual transmission from the Z31 has a completely different starter location than our automatic transmission does. Starter's on the side right here on the automatic, and the starter actually mounts from over here this way. Something that I didn't realize until I already had everything hooked up. I believe there's supposed to be an adapter plate with the proper spacing right here for the starter teeth to actually engage the flywheel properly. I went ahead and used some spacers. Since I was buying everything separately, I didn't have an entire parts car to work from. I highly recommend getting an actual entire parts car to strip all the parts out of. It'll make life a lot easier and you won't have to hunt around as much. So we have that with the starter. Starter wire right here, I cut down a butt connector and connected it in that way. I might come up with a more permanent solution, maybe a clip-in later on. But that worked for now for the starter wire. Another thing that's kind of a pain in the ass after you do a 5-speed swap is your oil changes. Look where that oil filter is. It gets oil everywhere, so you got to be real careful and clean it up real good. As a couple other things I ran into, which I learned all this myself since F31 Club wasn't up. We didn't have a lot of information available. There's a 2-piece dust shield that comes off, this being the bottom part, so you don't get debris into your flywheel. So there's the bottom half. The top half actually fits really well, but the bottom half actually comes up all the way up to way up there, where you can see that up there. So there's no hole for the starter through the automatic dust shield. I didn't have time to try to source a manual transmission dust shield, so I actually fabricated this. I notched it out and cut it out until I had enough room and spacing for everything. And then right here, since there's no fasteners, I actually just ran a little bead of RTVs to eliminate any vibrations. Over on this side, that mounts with those 2 bolts in the same factory location as it did originally on the automatic. You do also have these 2 mounts. Let me see if I can see it. Okay, so that mount, or that bracket, mounts to the engine and then mounts to the lower part of the bell housing. As you can see on this side, you don't have room for that mount, so I just deleted it. Those are the only 2 bolts where the starter goes through that I didn't use anymore, because that was actually very close to the factory location for that bracket that I took off. I did try to cut the bracket to make room for the starter, but right about here there wasn't enough space to get to this hole right here on the bell housing for a bolt to go through with that bracket, because the starter's in the way. So I just went ahead and went without that. When I got my transmission, dude was cool. I got it from. It was still connected to an engine. He needed the engine for some parts for his hard body or something. So I actually watched him pull the transmission off. It shifted smooth through the gears, spinning the shaft with no fluid in it. So I mean, it's actually worked out good so far. Another thing though that I ran into was, thank God, is I made him cough up the starter bolts, because those are different length bolts than any of the bolts that came out of the automatic bell housing. Brand new slave cylinder. This nice little braided steel clutch line here I got from a company in Portland called Oil Filter Services. basically I mocked up my slave cylinder and my clutch master cylinder, and I just ran a length of wire along the path that I wanted it to go to, and then I took that measurement to the shop and told them, hey, look, I need a braided steel clutch line. I took my master and slave with me and said, here's the ends I needed to go into. So they got me fittings and a clutch line to the appropriate length. This little bracket here, and then the two brackets that are similar to that I have up top that I used for mounting, I actually stole those off of my automatic transmission hard lines when I was deleting all the tranny lines. So they actually turned out to work out pretty well. Super functional for what I was going for. Moving on back a little bit farther, this here is your reverse switch for the 5-speed transmission. Obviously you don't have a reverse switch right there in the automatic. It's hooked up through the neutral safety switch in that whole area right here that the shift selector connects to. So I actually looked it up on F31 Club, did a search for reverse switch wiring, and somebody actually said that the black and green wires that came out of the shift selector wiring are actually the appropriate wires to connect into here to get a signal back to the reverse lights. I'm going to try to hook that up in just a minute here and see how that goes. Also right here you have your speedo cable. Mine's a 1990, so I have a speedo cable that was direct bolt in. It had a ground wire off the tranny, so I just ran the ground wire just for good measure to make sure it was good. I'm also running the factory cross member on the M30, and my transmission mount is, as you can see, is about 1.5 inches, almost 2 inches forward from the factory mount location. There was a guy, Keith, on here, I remember, on the Facebook page. His actually mounted back right about where factory is, and I was asking him if he knew why his was different. The only thing that me and him could come up with as far as a difference goes was he was running S13 cross member, which brought everything back farther. Not too bad though. Right here there's a little dip in the body, and that is bent in that dip also right here. I didn't have to, it was actually perfect. I just moved it forward just enough to where I still followed that contour, so the transmission mounting location as far as height is actually the same. And then I just drilled 2 holes for the studs, for which were the front of the mount, and just bolted it right up with the factory transmission mount. Moving back a little bit farther, so I took a measurement from right here and then all the way back to the rear diff, took that measurement into a driveline shop. I took in the back half of the factory driveline and the front half of the Z31 driveline and said, here is everything that I have. I need you guys to make me a custom 1-piece driveline at this length and have these ends match. And a week later, boom, driveline done. Bolted it right up. A couple other things when you're pulling your automatic transmission out. There's a series of wires that go into the side of the pan about right here. Those wires, you can either drop the pan out completely and disconnect them from the shift solenoids and the valve body, or if you did what I did, I just cut the wires off because I knew that I wasn't going to need them. On the other side of the transmission, on the automatic, right about here or here somewhere, I don't remember, I don't have the tranny anymore, there's another sensor that unplugs. That one is the output shaft speed sensor. That one's also not necessary to keep, so you can unplug that one and pull that one out. Once you get all of the mechanical aspects of the 5-speed swap done, you're gonna go to start the car and the starter's not going to engage. The reason the starter doesn't engage, there are a series of wires that come out of the neutral safety switch that 2 of them actually have to be either wired in to the clutch pedal if you want a neutral safety switch, or you wire them directly to each other and bypass neutral safety switch, and you can start the vehicle without the clutch pressed in. Alright guys, so next step here, I'm going to show you what the wires look like that actually came out of the automatic transmission. So there's a few of them. Now they route from the fuses right here, or the relays, and then they obviously, this is tucked, you know, in here. Then they route themselves down this way, boom, under, back down to the transmission. I already have them pulled up and fed out this way. There's a zip tie like every 5 inches. You have to unclip those to route them out. Just so you can see here, this is the output, or excuse me, the transmission output shaft speed sensor I was talking about. These ones here are the ones that I cut off that went to the valve body through the transmission pan. So you don't need any of this at all. So these actually route down to these plugs right here. So you can actually delete those just right out of here, at least to get you started. The red and black wires, I'll show you what the end of it looked like. So this is the end of the wires that went into where the neutral safety switch is. Originally I had this black and brown one connected and the car started, and I was like, sweet, that's awesome. So I traced them back down and they actually go to this relay right here. From here I decided to cut them off and just connect them together with some shrink wrap on there. But if you wanted to, you can take these two wires and you can feed them and route them through the firewall over on this side and actually connect them to the switch, one of the switches on the clutch pedal, and that will actually complete the circuit, and you can start the vehicle that way with the clutch all the way pressed in, as if it was factory. Real quick, master cylinder right here. Something that I learned, I chose to route the line up and over this hood hinge. It was too much interference with the hood hinge routing it under it. There's another one of those brackets I was talking about that I stole off of an automatic line. When I deleted those, routed it all up and over, nice, another bracket, and then down. So that's how I did that. So I already tested it, just you know, for good measure. Cut those off, connected them together, car still starts, everything's good there. Now I don't have an exposed wire there. I'm going to unplug and delete these two unnecessary ones, and then I'm going to take that green wire and that black wire and run them back down to the reverse switch. See if my reverse lights come on.